College. 3 years of memories and 1 semester to go.
Whether you're looking forward to graduation,
Formals.
or landing your dream job,
These last few months determine a lot about your future.
Like the rest of the country, universities shut down to stop the spread of coronavirus.
Forced to permanently close.
sounds like the perfect time for a global pandemic. Doctors and nurses working overtime to help patients, death tolls increasing every day, and life as we know it completely came to a halt. As visual storytellers, we wanted to learn about the impact that the pandemic would have on the 2020 graduating class.
I wanted to know what the economy looked like and how we can still prepare for the job force while in quarantine.
I wanted to know how panic over the crisis can affect our mental health and what we can do to stay sane in these unbelievable times.
So, grab your textbooks, highlighters, and quarantinis because class is about to begin. So I've been a serial intern since my sophomore year, and I've made this weird habit of saving all of my internship rejection letters. But this semester, the letters have looked and sounded just a little bit different. Good afternoon. Thank you for your application.
Thank you for your continued patience during these difficult times.
We are made
Due
to
to the uncertainty of the COVID-19
pandemic. We will no longer be offering
Thank you.
your
We hope you
2020
stay safe and healthy. Best.
So we've never seen anything like this before. So I reached out to some friends to see what their plans were and how much they've changed.
Right, so I actually spend a good deal of time trying to figure out what I want to do after graduation. Everyone goes through that last year stress of not really knowing what they want to do with their life.
So I was lucky enough to be chosen by Digitas in Chicago, so that was crazy to find out at first.
And I decided to take a chance and on a whim moved to Austin, Texas with one of my best friends from college. We were planning to move in May.
Well, the opportunity that I had was to be able to show my work in the student magazine.
And I finally applied for the internship. I think it was in November, and I didn't really hear back until February. So I got really excited that I got it.
Even before all this started, recent college grads of all races and genders still have a really hard time finding a job after they get their degree. According to the Economic Policy Institution, the unemployment and underemployment rate for recent grads was higher now than it was in the year 2000. So even though unemployment as a whole was really low before this pandemic, for a lot of us, finding a job after college wasn't going to be a cakewalk. And with nearly 4 million students turning their tassels, I want to know what the job market would look like after this pandemic. So I sat down with Sean Snaith, a UCF professor of economics, and Judy Panagakos from Early Stage Careers to find out what we should expect and how we could best use this time.
If we go back prior to the start of the pandemic, the state of the economy was extremely strong, particularly here in Florida, and the labor market was about the best I've ever seen. Unemployment was down below 3% statewide. Jobs were being created at a very rapid pace in Florida, much faster than what we were seeing nationally. And then because of the public health measures, they've effectively turned off large swaths of the economy. And so this is unprecedented. It's also pushed the economy into the worst recession since the Great Depression. The problem is that the data that we get isn't updated rapidly enough to reflect what the current situation is. So the best data that we have about the economy is weekly unemployment claims, and beyond that, we get monthly reports on the labor market, but that comes out with a lag. So we've seen data that right now doesn't reflect the severity of the economic situation, and we're not likely to see that until we get into May.
One of the issues is we're getting a lot of information from a lot of different places, and with so much already unknown about the virus, it can be hard to figure out what's true and what's not. So I took to my social media to ask my friends and classmates where they're getting their news, and also if they had a financial understanding of the impacts of COVID-19. And even though it's not a huge group, it still gives us kind of an idea of where we're getting all this information from. And what we found was really interesting. So out of everyone that took the poll, more people felt like they didn't have a good financial understanding of the impacts of COVID-19. And when we asked where they got their information from, 58% said social media, and then 24% said word of mouth, and 17% said they got it from the news. I think that's been the most confusing part. we don't really know what to do, so we have to sit and wait to see what comes next.
With a lot of people who started their search, March was just a really important time for people who were seniors in particular, if they hadn't already secured a position for after graduation, to really start to dig in. And then obviously everything came to a halt.
I got an email from my supervisor saying, hey, can we set up a phone call? And so I did a phone call later that day, and that's when they were like, there's really nothing we can do. It has nothing to do with you about canceling this internship, but it's just how things played out.
I could see my workload kind of being less and less as the days go on. So it was the end of the day, my boss just kind of took me into the office with the HR. They kind of explained, we really valued your time here, and we would love to give you an opportunity if more were to come up, but unfortunately we have to let you go.
I've had some other places that I've applied that just reached out to me, and they told me that they're not doing a program at all over the summer.
Really, I've worked so hard the past 2 years for this internship, and to have it all ripped out from underneath me for something that isn't in my control, it really kind of made me look at things differently, and it really just upset me, but there was nothing I could do about it.
What do you see happening as far as the job search goes, and do you think the economy could ever go back to normal?
Hopefully, if we start to see in May these public health measures at least being partially lifted, I think there's a good chance the economy will bounce back very rapidly in the second half of 2020. For those that are just starting to look now, it's going to be a difficult few months for sure. But hopefully by the end of 2020, things will have picked up appreciably.
So a lot of students are going to be job searching during this pandemic. So what are some things that we can do to make the most out of the situation and continue to further our career development?
You really want to be able to say that you spent your time wisely, not that you spent 24 hours a day, but that you really invested your time and energy. So are there things that you can do that speak to these other interests that you have? And maybe it's something you'll want to do the rest of your life, or maybe it's just something you think you could help out with right now. We publish on our early stage career site information about how people can give back. And we basically say, first of all, source, what's a list of things you could possibly do in your neighborhood or in your county? And then think about how your skills might help that organization. And if it speaks to something from your values. It's a way of giving back, but also being a little selfish. What's in it for me? What could be in it for them? If you're not sure where to begin, maybe brainstorm with a friend. So, that's where you could kind of have a healthy, brainstorming session about ideas and suggestions, or maybe you could work together on a project.
I think I have an idea.
It doesn't have to be paid work. You can give back in the community, and then also receive the benefit of the experience yourself. I think, when you said in the future, how should people be able to talk about this? So what did you learn? Did you give back to your family? Did you give back to the community? Did you reconnect with people? And then, and then if you're coming up short or you're bored, if right now, if someone's bored, I swear, have them call me. I'll give them something to do.
The light switch analogy for the economy this time is one, that I've been using frequently, because that's how it worked. We just turned off the lights. And the longer the lights are off, the more likely when we hit that switch again that some of those bulbs aren't going to light up again.
Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what I've learned is that it's really important to find new interests and ways that we can apply them, and that now is a great time to start giving back. But I am still concerned though, right? Because we're still in this situation. So what if when we do come back, all the light bulbs won't turn on again?
Wow, it sounds like we have a bit of a rock problem right now.
What's a rock problem?
So there are rock problems in life and Play-Doh problems in life.
Okay.
So a rock problem is basically something that no matter how hard you try, you can't change it, you can't mold it. That's where we're at right now. That's lost job opportunities, economic downfall, and a global pandemic. So check your desk, I left you something.
You left me something?
I did. So here's a rock problem, a thing we have no control over. a solid obstacle in our way.
The Play-Doh problems are the things that we do have control over. We can control our attitudes toward it. We can choose to see the good.
Since students have been sent home from universities, many have struggled with things like an increase in isolation, reduced activity, and overall just a lack of social interaction.
There was a week where I would just wake up, cry, go to bed, cry. Because I think, again, like I'm graduating, these were my last 2 months of college. And I read on a Facebook post recently that what seniors are going through right now, both in high school and in college, is that you're like watching a movie and then it just cuts out 20 minutes before it's supposed to end and you never know how it's going to end.
I was supposed to graduate in a few weeks. The walking ceremony or whatever you want to call it was in a week or so. I think it was like May 8th, but obviously won't be walking now. So that really sucks. It's been something I've been looking forward to. I could say my whole life of going to school.
I feel like it's just gonna, as someone who suffers from anxiety, as someone who suffers from ADHD, and as someone who takes medicine for it, as someone who's had episodes, I've sort of learned that in times like these, I can't put any more stress on my brain.
Whatever emotions you're feeling through this, everyone else around you is feeling those same emotions. Like everyone is kind of nervous. Everyone feels cooped up.
I wanted to know how we could be affected by all this added stress, so I sat down and talked with 2 mental health counselors, Cindy McDaniel and Marisol Toby, to figure out what we can change. So I noticed a lot of my fellow college students feel really guilty about being sad over things like graduation, when there are people out there fighting on the front lines or fighting for their lives. What do you have to say to students that may be feeling that conflict of emotion?
Even that example about feeling sad that you're not graduating. That's grief. That's sadness about something I thought it was happening and now it isn't.
Pain is pain is pain. You cannot compare one pain to the next.
So as silly as it seems, being sad over these missed experiences really is a form of grief. It's not the same type of grief we feel when we lose a loved one, but it's still a loss. What I learned from these mental health counselors is the concept of duality. It's not I'm sad, but it's I'm sad and. I'm sad about graduation and I'm sad that there are so many people fighting for their lives right now. It's not I'm sad about graduation, but I can't be sad because there are people dying right now. You can feel both at the same time. This grief can also be a lot to take on, especially when we feel like we're doing it alone.
So it is going to impact, I think, a lot in the sense of like isolation. Isolation trips up senses of insecurity, senses of shame, and that you don't belong. But it also does this weird thing. When we start feeling isolated and disconnected, we could at times get depressed. Now I use that loosely. I don't want to suggest clinical depression, but I'm talking about like, we're blue, we're down. What happens is that when blue and we're down, it's almost like this weird thing starts happening. Then we want to isolate more, which ironically makes you feel more blue and down.
These feelings of isolation and anxiety can really start creeping up when we watch the news. Seeing scary information every day can begin to take a toll on our mental health.
Remember when we watch the news and when we watch the media, it's someone else's narrative. In other words, the point of the gig, is to make sure that we keep watching. And what happens is we are craving information because that helps us feel safe. But it's a self-defeating, false sense of safety.
It's interesting. The students that have parents that have the news going on all the time are reporting increased anxiety. That makes sense. And those that are maybe watching it in the evening and the parents are kind of discussing it and they're having dialogue about it, it's actually decreased their anxiety.
So there's no reason we have to terrify ourselves with the news 24/7. If the information is important enough, I'm sure you'll hear about it through friends, emergency alerts, family, and so on. Instead, we can do things that decrease our anxiety, activities like reading a book, hanging out with your family, doing a puzzle, or watching your favorite TV shows. But what if we're really struggling right now? What if we have all these feelings and have no idea how to process them? All of the fears of the future, sadness over losing a job, and feelings of isolation are starting to gang up on us at the same time, and we don't know what to do. Well, there's a few things we can do, and it begins with the 3 A's. Awareness, acceptance, and action.
So first one is that awareness. Stop as many times as possible in the day to get that practice of creating space between I am having a feeling, not I am a hot mess of feelings. The second one is going to be acceptance. So this is way easier said than done. Acceptance is when you look at your friend and your friend tells you, I'm so confused. I'm sad that I didn't get to go on my date. And I feel so guilty because, hello, I'm alive and I'm fine and I have food at my house. And you look at your friend and you go, I totally get it. In fact, me too. That makes perfect sense. It's doing that to ourselves. That's acceptance. And that takes a lot of practice. And then the third one is action, right? The third A is going to be action, which is, okay, I'm having this thought, I'm having this feeling. It's always a messenger. Feelings are messenger. Anger means there's something to be done here. There's a boundary I don't have yet. Or there's a need I haven't met. That's what anger is. Sadness is something that was really important to me, died, and I haven't honored it. So every emotion is a messenger. So the third one is action of like, okay, what to do to address the feeling. Sometimes what we do is to numb the feeling or to shut the feeling down, which is okay.
Okay, that's really interesting. I never thought of that perspective before.
Yeah, so basically the biggest thing we have to remember is just to be kind to ourselves because we've never gone through anything like this before. We know what steps we can take, we know what Play-Doh problems we can mold and solve, and we know that we still have some control over our lives right now. So on the flip side of things, do you see any positives that could come out of this situation?
So I do foresee so many positives out of this in regards to relationship, in regards to what is important, in regards to appreciating little things. When we hear the word crisis, it seems like, oh my God, that's awful. Of course, as a therapist, I have a different perspective. Crisis means growth. Humans cannot grow if we don't go through a hot mess. We just don't. We just don't like it gently. We just don't. We have to go through conflict and things have to break for growth to happen. I mean, from a seed to a tree, it's not a gentle process. So when we go through a crisis, what happens is people's old mechanisms of coping, some were positive, a lot weren't. But they kind of fall apart. When that's gone, the crisis is us facing ourselves. It's facing the stuff we've been running away from a long time. If we're too comfortable, we don't tend to change.
So remember, we can get through this together.
That's right. And if you want to know more about economics, check out Dr. Snaith and the Institute for Economic Forecasting or Early Stage Careers with Judy Panagakos for career development.
To keep your mental health in check, please check out these resources here.
All right, I think we're done.
I think that's it.
You think that's it?
I think that's a wrap.